Welcome. This is A Joy of Life. My name is Karen Nolkemper, and I'm the Executive Director of the Respect Life Apostolate for the Archdiocese of St. Louis, and I'm also your host for The Joy of Life. Joining us today is the Terrio family from the state of California. Specifically, they come to us from the Diocese of Orange in Orange, California. Welcome. Joining us today in studio, we have a special family from the state of California. We've got Bill, Catherine, and Sandy Terrio from the Diocese of Orange in Orange, California. They're pro-life activists in the state of California, and we look forward to hearing more from each of you about your background, your pro-life mission and ministry. So whoever would like to go first, please just jump in and share a little bit about your pro-life involvement in the Diocese of Orange.
All of my adult life, Karen, I've been sympathetic to the pro-life cause, and I've voted my informed Catholic conscience. But the activism on my behalf started when I joined the Knights of Columbus in the late 1990s. My first year I was thrown into it. I was volunteered to become the Culture of Life chairman, a position I relished. I didn't expect it, but we engaged in prayer vigils in front of abortion clinics. We did fundraising activities, and that's what led me into the movement.
Oh, wonderful, great. That sounds good. Your whole life, but having the piece with the Knights of Columbus, etc. I want to come back and talk a little bit more about that later. But thank you so much. Thank you, Bill.
Sure.
Yeah, and Sandy, how about yourself?
Well, it started really when I was 9 years old. My dad was involved in the Knights of Columbus, and we were in a March for Life in Concord, New Hampshire. And when I was doing that, I just felt so touched. I felt so joyful and so happy. So eventually, as time went on, I just got more actively involved. And then when I moved out to California, a few years later, there was an opportunity for us to become the Respect Life reps. So we just jumped in on it and did it.
Wonderful. The Respect Life reps, are your whole family representatives at your parish? Okay, so you're the coordinators?
Yes.
Wonderful, super. And what parish is that?
We belong to St. Hedwig Parish in Los Alamitos, California. It's in the Diocese of Orange.
Got it, okay. A lot of Catholic folks in that particular area?
Yes, there are.
Good, wonderful,
Yes.
okay. And Kathy, how about yourself? Tell me a little bit about your pro-life involvement.
I'm a Catholic convert, and I became a Catholic when I was 12. My mom came back to the church then, and my dad was Methodist. And he was very involved at St. Hedwig's at that time in pro-life. He was a doctor. And I remember as a small child, they even had, I don't know how they got a hold of it, but children from different stages of life that had died. And so I got to see that in person, and it really affected me and made me realize I couldn't understand why anybody could not know that this is a child. The fingers, the toes, the hands. And then also there was someone close to me that had had an abortion and tried to drive their car off a bridge. So I not only had a heart for the children, but also the mothers who made a decision that harmed them and ended the life of their child.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And oftentimes, personal experiences by someone we know, a friend, a family member, that really touches our heart. It brings home the reality of the horror and the violence of abortion, not only obviously to the unborn baby, but to the women who suffer physically, emotionally, spiritually as well, and oftentimes to the fathers, depending upon their role. They may not have known, or they might have been actively involved in that. So again, the abortion obviously harms the men as well, so it really harms the whole entire family, as we all know. Yes. What I'd like to just ask you all in terms of what are you seeing in your parish, in your diocese, that's particularly effective in terms of rallying the troops in support of life? What activities or programs are you seeing where you're garnering some support, again, in speaking the truth about life? What are you seeing?
Well, there's a few things we do that we feel are effective. We put on pro-life conferences. We had one in February at our parish. We had a national speaker and some local speakers, including our pastor, and it was very effective in creating a greater awareness of the dangers of abortion.
Right.
Not just the taking of an innocent human being, the life of an innocent human being, but also the dangers to the mother and the medical issues she may face later in life. One of the other things we like to do, and a good way of getting young children involved, is Pennies from Heaven, which is a program involved. We give baby bottles to the parish, kids in the parish school, CCD program and ask them to, over the course of 2 weeks, fill it up with their change. And it gives them a sense that they're contributing to the movement too.
Right, absolutely. And I like that because anybody can contribute. But you have that visual, concrete way, here's how I'm contributing, putting money, pennies in the baby's bottles, and this is what I can do to save a life of an unborn baby. So again, engaging our children in the parishes, that's a really good idea. So thank you very much. How about other ideas? Have you seen things that are particularly effective in your parish work?
Yes, in fact, we had a Holy Innocents Mass last year, and it turned out wonderful. We got all these comments. One mother had lost her son 23 years ago, and she was very sad about what had happened, depressed and devastated. And we had sent out a notice about a Holy Innocents Mass coming where mothers could bring up a candle to the altar who had lost a child, you know, either by any kind of death. And so she had written us, and she was just so touched and so happy. Everyone was crying. They loved it. They were very deeply moved by this. It was a powerful tool.
And so you brought up something that we're also seeing in St. Louis. We call this a naming and commendation ceremony, something very similar. And in fact, there's greater emphasis now too at the USCCB level regarding what can we do to reach families who've lost a child, an infant who died before birth for any reason, whether that be miscarriage or stillbirth, whether that be abortion or accident. So how can we reach out and minister to people right there in their area of grief and to bring them comfort and to really give them an opportunity to name that child through a very beautiful, moving rite. Sometimes that occurs within a Mass and sometimes that occurs separate from a Mass in our own Archdiocese. And I really just want to affirm what you're saying, and we see those similar types of results and comments here in the Archdiocese of St. Louis as well too, just very important and a good reminder for me and others that we need to continue offering, whether it be a Holy Innocents Mass or in this case we call it a naming and commendation ceremony and rite. So thank you for reminding us about how important that is and sharing your experience with that particular Mass. Thank you. And Kathy, how about you? What are you
I
seeing
thought
that's
one of
effective?
the wonderful things was when we showed October Baby.
Yes.
The movie, it's about a failed abortion attempt and a child who's adopted and doesn't know that she was adopted until she's older and is having medical problems. And she goes back in search to find her mother, and her mother is uncomfortable because her husband, her current husband, who she has a child with, doesn't know what had happened. And at the beginning it seemed like she might speak to her, but then when he came in it threw everything off. And she came back and left her a note and said, "I forgive you."
Wow.
And what was interesting is the actress who played the part of the mother had an abortion and said it on camera and shared that she actually cried and had a healing through this movie, playing that part.
Yeah. And what I love about movies, too, a very non-threatening way to evangelize, to speak the truth in love, to use actors who have personally experienced the pain of abortion, and for this actress to bravely explain that by filming this video or this movie, it allowed for a healing in her own life as well, too.
Yes.
That speaks volumes, I think, to the audience, to other actors, to all kinds of individuals who are watching that. And what a great tool for a non-threatening way to evangelize. I just love the
Yes.
idea of movies, October Baby, and a few others that really, again, speak the truth about life and have tremendous ability to reach mass audiences in a very palatable format. It's not like, gosh, I've got to be with folks I don't know. I can watch this movie, whether it be with a group or at home,
Yes.
on the couch with some popcorn or with a youth group. I know youth groups and others have taken some movies, and this is a way of evangelizing to the teens as well as by offering those particular movies. So all
Yes.
really, really great ideas.
We're very proud of our pastor there, Father Chris, because he's very supportive and he has really tried to push to support all pro-life issues, like you said, from womb to tomb.
Right, right. Well, you're very blessed. And that brings up another point. I think that we're all called to pray for our priests in a special way. I know that we'd all
Absolutely.
agree, and for all of us, gosh, it's so important because there's so much going on, and priests are so busy too. So anything we can do to support them, obviously through our prayers, but through our kind words. And I think as a movement, just to educate, inform, pray for, to dialogue with our priests. So again, just thank you for reminding our viewers of how important that is. And again, you all are very blessed and very lucky to have a
Yes,
very
we
pro-life
are.
and a very supportive pastor. So that is
Yes.
it's a wonderful blessing. Well, I do want to move because I know that you all have shared with me that you're from the state of California. And I, hail from the heartland, from St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised. I've lived here my entire life, with the exception of a brief stint for college in Oklahoma, but still in the central corridor, the Midwest here. So tell me a little bit about some of the special challenges that you might be facing being pro-life advocates, or activists, I should say, both advocates and activists in the state of California. What are some of the special challenges that you're seeing in terms of life issues? If you could share.
Well, Karen, I would just say that the state legislator is overwhelmingly supportive of abortion legislation, and we have to deal with that.
Sure.
But what is particularly concerning is that Planned Parenthood is working their way into the schools. They're in some of the high schools. They have offices in some of the high schools in Los Angeles. So we have to start with, the very young children and start educating them very young and explain the importance of chastity and communicating with their parents if they have issues.
Right. I want to stop you and just make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say that Planned Parenthood is in the high schools?
It is. They have offices in some of the high schools in the LA area.
Wow. Okay. And that, Bill, this touches on such an important point in terms of the mission for ending abortion and for speaking the truth and chastity education. I want to just briefly share something about a speaker that I heard, and you all might have heard the same speaker years ago, Carol Everett. She was sort of the Abby Johnson, 20, 25 years prior to Abby Johnson. And if memory serves me correctly, she had owned and or operated 4 abortion clinics in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the point to all of this is, I remember hearing her say something along the lines that part of Planned Parenthood's strategy was to get into the school systems and do that early on so that the experts from Planned Parenthood would go into the schools, sometimes, even prior to high school age. And the mission was to break down the natural modesty that occurs with our children, and then to also drive a wedge between students and their parents in terms of open communication by having these experts, these Planned Parenthood experts into the schools. So again, just think about that infiltration. So it's not like Planned Parenthood is showing up when somebody is a teenager knocking on their doors saying, come over here and have an abortion, to somebody who's 13, 14, 15. There's been an education campaign younger, but also while they're in the schools, the high schools, at that teenage year, so at the same time. And that really drives home something I just want to share with you all and our listeners, and hear more about what's happening, in your diocese as well. In St. Louis, very blessed to have something called the Right Start program. And START is an acronym for Students Tackling Abortion Realities Today. Beautiful program led by a part-time coordinator and an army of volunteer teachers. We've got about a dozen volunteer teachers, and we're reaching the Catholic schools, the PSR programs, and really educating the students on a couple of things: fetal development, abortion, the virtue of chastity, making a difference with your own unique life, with your own God-given gifts, skills, and talents, and then a closing prayer service. And the beauty of this program is subsequently we have a creative writing essay contest where 8th graders throughout the diocese write essays, and they answer the question, tell us how by practicing the virtue of chastity that helps to prevent you or protect you from an abortion, but also live a life that's happy, healthy, and holy. And every year, are you ready for this? We have over 1,100 8th graders write essays that answer that question, how by practicing the virtue of chastity that protects them from abortion, helps them again to lead a life that's healthy, happy, and holy. One other year we also had the question, last year, 40 years of Roe v. Wade, how has that impacted the culture? And then what do these 8th grade students plan to do to end abortion? And as I mentioned, over 1,100 students write essays, but here's what's really important. Many of the students cite the 8th grade education program the Catholic Church is teaching, again, on the virtue of chastity, abortion, fetal development. They cite that program as where they very first learned about the truth of chastity, the horrors of abortion. Again, the church's teaching on the value of life. And so again, I'm just so excited about what's happening, and I see other efforts where people of faith, all of us, are getting into the school systems early on to talk about chastity, the truth of that, and to give kids the tools and the encouragement to say yes to God, to themselves, their self-esteem, their future, and to life. And so I didn't mean to just gotta talk a little about, but I'm just excited about what you shared, and that reinforces in my mind that we all need to continue to start early on and educate and empower our parents and empower our teens. So maybe, if you don't mind, could talk a little bit more about, are you seeing education programs on chastity education, or youth group programs, or speakers who talk about chastity? What have you seen maybe in your own area along those lines?
Well, there was a priest, his name's Father Ed Broom, for St. Peter Chanel Church in Hawaiian Gardens, California, and I remember him talking about how it's important to get an education first. Yes. Until, you're right after you graduate college, and then start dating, and also be chaste, because that not only prevents bad marriages, but that prevents abortions. And it just hit me right here in the gut, because I'm 19, and it just really, really touched me.
Yeah. That's very wise wisdom to hear that from priests. We need to encourage people to speak out and speak the truth, because we don't know those seeds that we're planting, and it's just exciting to see that. I know also theology of the body, seeing more of that. I don't know if that's how that's being played out in California, but I know having those conferences, speakers on theology of the body, great books. I know there's one by Jason Everett on theology of his body, her body. Again, to the very point, it really promotes the virtue of chastity and talks about self-respect, respect for self and others, and will also, again, lead that good foundation for marriages, as well as protect people from abortion. So, well, I digressed a little bit, but thank you for indulging me. So, again, more about maybe some of the challenges. I know you spoke, Bill, about Planned Parenthood in the high schools. Are there other unique challenges that you're seeing in the state of California?
Well, the diocese here is very Catholic at St. Louis, and back there, I was shocked. As you mentioned, Abby Johnson, she was on a program, and she talked about how when she was in the clinic, that there were many people that came in with a rosary in one hand and grabbed onto the bed with the other, and were praying the rosary, in other words, praying for God to get them through the abortion. And I was stunned, because I didn't realize how many Catholics are confused. And then when I was speaking at a church one time about pro-life, I just remember some of the people shaking their head no, and having someone come up to me and say, well, it's really not good for a young kid, and just made me realize that we really need to get to the pews, not just outside the pews, because some people, although they may be following the Catholic Church in many areas, seem to be very misled in that area about what is right.
It's like, that really, what you just said about holding a rosary, and that really breaks my heart. And to your very point, how do we educate people, starting with the virtue of chastity, and then also educating them that their life is sacred, their baby's life is sacred. We have resources and choices. So if somebody does find themselves in a crisis pregnancy situation, to offer them really, really strong resources. Oftentimes I've seen people be very fearful and say, well, gosh, what am I going to do? Yes, I understand. And that just breaks my heart, that potentially people understand, yet they feel conflicted, or they're afraid of the unknown, as opposed to reaching out to, I know this is true in California, I want to hear more about this too, but the fantastic resources that we all have available in all of our states. Everything from, a pregnancy resource center where people can live at home and receive clothing, food, help for themselves and for their child. In some cases, I know there's a special education fund with some pregnancy resource centers to help moms continue their education while they're pregnant and afterwards. So it's a pregnancy resource center. Then also maternity homes is another great resource where, in terms of the continuum of care available to women finding themselves in an untimely or crisis pregnancy situation, where you can actually go and live at a maternity home and bring dependent children, if you like, and there's food, clothing, medical care, education for those dependent children. And we have a particular group in St. Louis too, where there's job training as well for the women. So it's just a continuum of care that's phenomenal, comprehensive and compassionate in the care, as well as foster and adoptive care services here provided by Catholic Charities. But maybe if you could speak to a little of the resources.
Well,
I see you smiling.
Yes, Precious Life is a wonderful place in our area in Los Alamitos, and they provide that. The women live there for a long period of time. They help them with their babies. They also help them to develop some kind of a career so they can go out on their own. And the thing that really touched my heart is when my daughter got involved in pro-life, the woman who started this, Mrs. Sharon, said to me, "You're the third generation in my family." And I didn't know what she was talking about. And she said that my father, who had given talks there at St. Hedwig's about pro-life, that he had once said something, you know, just do something, try to do something. And she started this whole home and everything. And it just blew my mind because I was thinking, you know, if you do all this and even one heart is touched, especially somebody like her, all the good that has come from what she started all these years, it's just a blessing from God.
And Karen, if I may interject for a moment, on Mother's Day we started what we hoped to be a continuing program, but we had our first annual baby shower for Precious Life Shelter. And we didn't have a lot of time to promote it. It was just something we put together within a few weeks, and it was overwhelmingly supported by the parish. And next year we have high expectations that will surpass the generosity that our parishioners showed this year.
That is so encouraging to see that, and just that courage to step out and to lead the way. And then we're very blessed and inspired by what happens, sometimes overwhelmed, and the results exceed our expectations, absolutely, in terms of people's generosity and their commitments.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to ask you is, what gives you the courage to be pro-life despite once you get outside of our parishes and schools and immediate families, just in that culture, and I'm not picking necessarily just on California, but just knowing how the coast might be a little bit different than it is in the heartland in the Midwest. What gives you the courage? How do you maintain the courage to continue to speak out about life?
In my particular case, I've always been inspired by Mother Teresa, who said that God calls us to be faithful, not successful. So we seek to change the world one soul at a time.
Absolutely. Very well said. And that's what I think we all need to remember, one soul at a time, that value of the one soul. And just to, when we speak the truth in love, God will fortify us. And I love the words of Mother Teresa too, Blessed Teresa Boy. She was a wonderful, wonderful role model for so many people. So thank you. Yes. Were you going to say something in terms of what gives you all the courage? How do you continue to
I think
be brave?
Knowing at 9 years old that each person, no matter what state of life, whether they're very busy or not, can be active in some way in pro-life. And just having a sense of complete joy, feeling that God called me to it, and knowing that part of our Catholic faith is to do what is right and be pro-life, that's what keeps me going. To know that no matter, to not care what other people think, to care about what God thinks, I think really hits me there.
Absolutely. And how do you maintain your momentum, and what do you see in terms of youth or young adult involvement in the Diocese of Orange? Talk to me a little bit about where things are at and maybe momentum in that area with youth and young
Well, we're
adult.
starting to get more, but I think, we're starting to get more activities involved, and I think it's kind of a struggle because youth don't know, and young adults unfortunately don't know, even at their own age, there's people getting abortions. I think they need to get more knowledge of that, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to organize fun and spiritual events that will pull the young people in to let them know you can make a difference no matter what state of life you're in.
Absolutely. I think that is so true. We can get in the game. We're all called to do something. To your point, regardless of our age, some of us are young, some of us are old, some of us are homebound, some of us are very active. So at the very minimum, we can always pray and be educated, and we're very much called to do that. So I love your spirit and momentum. And I want to ask you about the March for Life, too. Was that the one in Washington, D.C., or was that in your local area?
It was in my hometown, Concord, New Hampshire. And just see, there was a ton of people there, a few hundred, just to see the excitement that happened in their eyes. And to know that we're fighting for what's right, the joy, that's what called me to it. And that's what changed me.
And I want to really piggyback on that. Having been a youth minister many years ago, about 20 years ago, and now in this particular role with Respect Life Apostolate, every year the Catholic Youth Apostolate and the Office of Youth Ministry with our Archdiocese will take about 1,600 youth and young adults to Washington, D.C. for the annual Roe v. Wade March for Life. And just the momentum of people from all over the nation. They're there, they're united for life. And it's so encouraging and inspiring. Even if only one person showed up, it would still be encouraging and inspiring. But to your very point, boy, the energy that occurs and the faith and the wisdom and the healing and the conversions that occur. But again, it's exciting to see how youth and young adult are doing that, how they're getting involved with Marches for Life, either in their home state or at DC.
Oh, yeah.
And it really helps to energize the base.
Karen,
Yes.
in our diocese, on January 17th of 2015, our Diocese of Orange has worked and agreed with the Diocese of Archdiocese of Los Angeles to cooperate and have a March for Life to the Cathedral in Los Angeles. I'm not sure where it begins. I don't know if it's going to begin in Orange County and move up there, but and all the details haven't been worked out, but the focus will be on recruiting young kids to participate in this march.
Great.
To build awareness in the communities.
Yeah, very, very good. And thank you for doing that. It's exciting to hear what's occurring. And I also want to just talk a little bit about the Knights of Columbus too. Wow, what a phenomenal national pro-life group. Talk about Warriors for Life. And I just appreciate their support and what they've done. Been so faithfully pro-life across the nation and really blessed so many parishes, people's families throughout the generations. And so just, thank you for your involvement with the
Thank you.
Knights.
The
too.
Knights have
Sure.
been very supportive of our efforts.
Good,
On
glad
the,
to.
and the diocesan level as well as the parish level.
Good. That's glad to hear. So, well, any other Kathy, trends that you're seeing or movements that are encouraging in terms of additional opportunities for people to get involved?
Sure. Can you think of any?
I know that.
I think, survivors of the abortion Holocaust, they find a way to pull the young people in and to fight for life. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, maybe combining forces with them on an event or trying to get them involved, having fun events that pull the people in. I think that's what really hits home.
Wow, we are almost out of time, and yet there's so much more I'd like to cover. At this point, I'd like to thank the Theriault family for their steadfast commitment to life, their wonderful pro-life work, and for their creative ideas and insights regarding how to build a culture of life. And really, all of us are called to build a culture of life. So I'd like to challenge our listeners sometime during this next week to spend a holy hour praying and discerning where is God calling you to build a culture of life. Until next time, my name is Karen Nolkemper. This is The Joy of Life, and may God continue to bless you and your family always.